Hi, how are you? This is Rich from ReadyHeli, and this morning what we're going to do is we're going to show you how to set up your helicopter with the VBar Express, your basic setup, without any of the expert settings, without the Pro, just when you get it out of the box, how you can set it up and get out to the field and fly, because that's what we know everybody wants to do. This should take about 20 minutes from start to finish, and this is all after you have your helicopter built and set up based on your manufacturer of the helicopter, based on the manual, meaning that you have all your servo links set correctly, you have your pitch arms at the right dimension according to the manual, and what you want also is you want to make sure that you have your arms disconnected from the swash plate, because if you haven't centered your servos prior to installing them, once you hook them up to the V-bar, they're going to center themselves, and if they're not the right dimensions, you might get some binding and possibly damage your servos. So you want to make sure that you don't do that. At this point, the only thing that should be connected is your V-bar and power to the V-bar. And the V-bar is connected through a USB port through the cable that's provided to you when you purchase the V-bar. The other things you'll need to complete this, since you've already built the helicopter, is you'll need a digital pitch gauge for a flybarless system. Obviously your radio, and we'll bind it. We'll go over the binding process here in a second. You'll need your basic tools to remove your servo arms if you need to, if they're not centered correctly. A ball link plier, so that you can take them off if we need to make any further adjustments on the ball links as well, and any other associated tools that you might need. So first thing what you want to do is we want to make sure that once everything is all plugged in and I've already started up the 5.3 software on the computer, and you can see we've already got two green lights, one USB, meaning that the USB is connected through the V-bar, and also the connected, meaning that it's now reading what's on the V-bar. If you don't have those lights, you cannot go any further. You have to have both of those lights in order to go through the V-bar. There are plenty of videos. Mr. Frederick Mellon is a V-bar expert in my opinion, and he's got plenty of videos on how to get that driver set up if you don't have the green lights, and also for the expert settings that we're not going to cover here. There's plenty of videos available for that if you want to delve into it a little bit deeper once you get this thing flying. So the first thing you do, you come up to this main screen, and you'll see, like I said, you have everything. This screen is pretty cool. It's an active live display of what's going on with your V-bar. You won't see anything happening here right now because it's not bound to the receiver that we have on there. And we're using Futaba this morning with the S-Bus. So the first thing you want to do, we'll cover all these things later down the road once we come back to this main screen. I'll show you how we can do some of that stuff. Is you want to go over here to the top right, and you want to click Setup. Now for some of you, what's going to happen is when you plug your V-bar in, you're not going to get this side over here which says governor screen, because that's for the Pro version of the software. So right now it's thinking we have Pro because it's not connected to the V-bar as far as binding wise goes. Another cool thing, since it popped up, and we'll cover that before I move on, is a lot of times if you're confused about what each mode will do or what each setting does, if you have the sliders, again, some of these sliders will or not be there if you don't have the Pro version. You just highlight over the slider or over something, and you'll see that a box comes up and tells you what that does. Okay, for instance, if we go over here to the main rotor style, if I highlight over this right here and just wait for a second, a little box will come up and it'll tell you what that slider does. So it's really a good system where if you go, what does that style mean? What does this mean? And it gives you suggestions on what you should use for your particular helicopter. You can see down here on the live display that we're showing 6 volts, that I have the receiver battery already hooked up to the V-bar, which is another really good point. A good safety tip, you really don't want to use your onboard battery to do this. And if you do, and you don't have another battery, then obviously you want to disconnect your motor so you don't inadvertently start your motor while you're sitting on the bench. The best possible way, in my opinion, is to get a receiver battery, 7.4, use a BEC, or and plug it right into the V-bar, and that way you just have a separate battery. You're not wasting your other ones while you're doing the setup. So let's get right to it. We'll go into setup. You can read this box here. It's just a disclaimer saying, be careful, you're going to do this. You hit OK. All right. Now here's what happens. Once you set this up, you can always come back into your unit and make changes and corrections. The only thing that will change is what you've changed, if that makes sense. It's not going to reset the whole V-bar every time you come in here. The only way that you will reset the whole V-bar is once you go through the setup, and if you come back in here and you want to do something, if you hit create new setup, it's going to blank out your V-bar, and now you'll have to do the whole setup again. If you want to come in here and just change something, 1 or 2 of the parameters, you can come down here and just hit continue. because you've already got a VBar set up on here, and you can hit continue and just go to the tab that you want. We're going to go from start, so we're going to go ahead and here create new setup. Again, you get the warning. Go ahead and click on that. Okay. Sending data. So now it's sending data to the VBar. So now the VBar is blanked out. It has no information on it, and we're going to put all the information in it. The very first thing we need to do is we need to bind. Before we can bind, we need to tell the VBar what type of a system we're using. Are we using a receiver by itself with extra wires going to the VBar? Are we using an S-bus? Or are we using Spectrum, JR? Which type of satellites that we're using? Okay, and it's real simple. In the drop-down menu, I'm going to select Futaba S-bus for me. Okay, now again, general page. The right side of your page is where you'll be doing all your work. The left side of the page is going to give you instructions on how to do your work. So it's really simple. You'll be clicking over on the right and you're reading on the left. Okay, so here it says the bind process. And without reading it, basically it tells you you have to go through the same bind process that you go through normally without a VBar, because you're treating your VBar as the receiver. Okay, so if you have a Futaba system with an S-bus, what it's telling you is you have to disconnect the power. We'll turn the battery, we'll turn the radio off first, then we'll disconnect the power very quickly from the VBar, reconnect it, and then go through the bind process, turning the radio on and hitting the button on the S-bus module. Okay, if you're using a Spectrum or JR, okay, again, you'll turn off your radio, you'll cycle the power on the VBar, and then you'll go through your binding process with your Spectrum. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to bind this radio with this S-bus and this VBar. Now this receiver has been used before, so it's already connected basically to this radio, so we just now need to connect it through the radio, through the S-bus, to the VBar. So we're going to select on here Futaba S-bus. And now it gives me the option of cold start here instead of bind. Normally you would see bind here if it wasn't already connected via the radio and the S-bus, but since it's already talking to each other, now it just needs to connect it to the VBar, so it's asking me to cold start. So we'll go ahead and hit that. We'll wait for it to initialize. Thinking? Perfect. Okay, so now what I have is I have a green light on my S-bus, which tells me I'm bound to my radio. And if you look on this screen here, you'll see some of these bars are moving. And that's telling me that it's bound to the VBar now. It'll be blue and yellow lines telling you if you're going forward, back, left, right, or vice versa. So as long as I can move these, then I know I'm bound to the VBar. Okay? So we're done with that page. And it should show you down here, again, what a picture of what you're looking at. If you pick Spectrum, it'll show you a different type of a thing down there. It'll show you satellites. Okay? So we're going to hit continue. And the first tab we're going to go to is called the transmitter tab. Now here's where you're going to set things up in your radio. Later we're going to set things up in the VBar program. What you're doing in this page is you are calibrating your radio to the VBar. So if 100 in your radio needs to be 100 in the VBar. Okay? So the first thing that we want to do is we want to go ahead and look and see where our mid sticks are. Everything's going to be mid stick in the center, so I'll move my collective throttle, whatever you want to call it, to the mid stick. And I'm looking around and you can see I have a 0 on aileron, I have a -1 on the elevator, a 0 on the rudder, I have 11 on the collective. And that's iffy because, yeah, you got to figure out where the center is for you. Try to line it up as best you can with the lines. So the first thing we want to do is we want to go ahead and use our sub-trim in the radio and make all of that 0. So I'm going to go into my menu. I'll go into my sub-trim. And we'll go ahead and, let's see, aileron looks good, so we don't need to touch aileron. Our elevator is at -1, so I'm going to go down here to my elevator. And I'm going to adjust that till I get 0 via the sub-trim. Now I'm going to go over to my collective, or pitch in your radio is what it's going to be. Pitch in your radio, it probably won't say collective. Okay, and I'm going to adjust that to 0. And these should be fairly close. They shouldn't really be really far out. Don't worry about the numbers in the radio at this time. Worry about the numbers on the screen. That's where you're going to be concentrating on. Now I'm going to use the same stick. Obviously, I'm going to look at my throttles at 0. We're not really worried about the aux gyro right now. We'll worry about that when we come back out, okay? And we'll program the aux gyro once we do that. So now I have all that set up. So now I want to do is I want to make sure that every servo, or according to the VBar, because our servos are not hooked up right now, is moving in the right direction. So I'm going to take my collective, which is obviously going to move 2 bars on here. It's going to move collective and it's going to move your throttle. And I'm going to go forward and back, and I'm going to take a look. And now if you see, as I'm moving this stick, and I go up with the collective, you can see both my throttle and my collective go down when they should be going up. Okay? So we're going to go into my radio. I'm going to go into the reverse in the radio, and I'm going to reverse my throttle, and my pitch. Okay, so now I should get up and down on both my collective, pitch, or my throttle, and my throttle. Okay, so let's look at our tail. I have right and left, so we know that's correct. This is really nice too. Instead of going forward and back, it says push and pull, so there's really no confusion. So if you're pushing the stick, it should go up. Pulling the stick should go down, and again, that one's reversed. So we're going to go into our elevator. Reverse that, check it again. Here we go down, here we go up, and now we're going to check our ailerons. And our aileron is correct, right and left. Okay, so we're all good there. Next thing we want to do, we're going to go into our endpoints in the radio. Either endpoints or ATV based on your radio. I believe JR and Spectrum is going to say ATV or servo travel. And the Futaba is going to say endpoints. Okay, and now what we want to do in here is we want to program 100 on both sides, up and down, right and left. Again, using our endpoints in the radio. So we'll go ahead and do our throttle first. We'll take a look at our throttle. Throttle down here, I've got 99 at the top, and I've got 99 at the bottom. So I'm going to go into my endpoints for the throttle. And on the bottom, I'm at 99. I'm going to increase that to get 100. I'm going to go up and increase that to get 100. Okay, I'm good there. So now let me go into ailerons, and we're going to go this way. I got to kind of play with your hands a little bit and hold it and adjust at the same time. Our aileron to the left, I'm at 99. So let me click on that one. Come on, click on there for me. There we go. So aileron to the left, we want to go to 90. There's 100. Aileron to the right, 99, and there's 100. So we'll go down to the elevator. Elevator up is 98 this time. There's 100. Down is 100. We don't even have to touch that one. That's good. We'll check our rudder. Well, we need to go down to the rudder. 99, there's 100. 99, there's 100. And then we need to do the throttle again to check for our pitch and go down to do our pitch. Same stick, just different control. Up is reading at 113, so we want to bring that one down, obviously. There's 100. And we need to bring that one down as well. Again, don't worry about the numbers in your radio at this time. Worry about the numbers on the screen. You want everything to be 100 and 100. So now that I've done that, I'm going to check everything again. I have up, I have the right control, I have 100 and 100, 100 and 100, right control, 100 and 100, right control. We're good with this page. Okay, let's go on to the next page. There's a set center here button. What you can do is once you set your sub trims up to get everything in the center, you can hit that and it'll tell the VBar that that's your center. You want to do that before you start adjusting all of your other stuff. Okay, next there's just a couple of questions, real simple questions. So again, if you look on the left side, it'll tell you what it's looking for in this mode. On the right side is where you're going to click and make your connections or directions or tell the VBar what you want it to do. Here it's asking for the sensor. Which way is the sensor facing? So on this one, we have the sensor on the back of the helicopter with the wire from the sensor going backwards. Okay? So it is exactly like this picture. and it'll say, hey, it's a standard V-bar, the cable towards the tail, label facing up. Now, if you have a mini V-bar, you don't have a separate sensor, so it's asking you, what is the mini bar doing? Because the mini bar is actually the sensor as well. So it would be the same question. It's the same picture, and it will tell you, well, your mini V-bar is facing forward with the label down. Okay, so same thing. So you just want to click on that. Let me cover one thing real quickly. Sometimes you'll come in here, very, very seldom will it happen. You'll come to the screen and you will not see a picture for a sensor. We've get that call several times. What you probably need to do then is go back out and create a new setup. Okay, because something has happened in the system where it won't show you the picture for the V-bar, and it's just it's a fluke in the system at some point in time. Very, very seldom will it happen, but it doesn't mean anything's wrong with your system. You just need to reboot it and start a new setup. So we'll continue. It's asking us which way is the rotor head turning. Pretty simple. 99.9% of the helicopters are all going to be turning clockwise. If you're building a scale or if you have a different helicopter, you just click on the other one where it says counterclockwise. Okay, something if you read in the very front, when we set up your radio, one thing we probably should have said in the beginning, with your radio, before you start any of this, again, sorry to bring it up now, but before you start any of this, your radio should be set for a new model, meaning no trim, no adjustments, no curves, nothing, new model, with H1 setting, meaning one servo per control. Okay, because we're going to make the settings in the V-bar. Even if you had, let's say that you've had this helicopter and you had a different flybarless system on there, and you said, I'm just going to switch over to the V-bar, but everything's all set up, so I'm just going to leave my settings in the radio. It won't work that way, because it's different settings. So you need to start from scratch, zero out your radio, start a new model, and go from there. So in your radio should be H1, one servo per control, and then when you come here on this page, this is when you're going to select what type of swash you have. And obviously, and what we have here, and if you're concerned or don't know, basically you just need to look at the helicopter, top looking down, looking forward. We have two swash, two controls in the front, one in the back. That makes it HR3. So we'll click on HR3, which is already clicked. And again, it asks you, Heli HR3, 120, CCPM, one servo behind, two in front of the main shaft. So it's pretty it's kind of checking you to make sure you're doing the right thing. So we say yes, and we continue. Now it's going to ask us, hey, which way does your swash blade move when you get positive pitch? And with this helicopter, the swash goes up to give positive pitch. Some helicopters, it goes down. So you just click on whichever one it is for that. Now what it's going to want us to do, it's going to want us to plug in the servos. This is when you plug them in. Now you're only going to plug in your cyclic servos at this point. We'll plug into the rudder ones later. So you can, again, if you're a little confused as to which servo plugs into where, it tells you right here. You don't even need to know what's the aileron, what's the pitch, what's the elevator. It's telling you where this servo is located. It goes into channel 2, where this one's channel 3, where this one is channel 1. So I'm going to go ahead and plug those servos in now. And now they're going to be powered as soon as you plug them in, because I already have power on the V-bar. Okay. Okay, we have our 3 servos plugged in now into the right positions, and you saw as soon as they were plugged in. Again, you want these disconnected at that time. You want to leave them disconnected because if they're not centered, they're going to go to center. And if you haven't sent, if the linkages are hooked up and they're not correct, you can get some binding and possibly damage your servos. So now they're all connected. So now what we want to do is we want to make sure and look at our servos and make sure that they're 90 degrees and that they are centered before we hook them up. So we'll take a look at this one, and you want to obviously want to be in the center position for your cyclic. For your collective. Cyclic will maintain center on its own. So we're good there. And we'll look at our elevator, and we look good there as well. So now, since they're centered, now we can go ahead and attach our servos to the rotor head. Okay, now we have our servos hooked up into the correct position, channel 1, channel 2, and channel 3, not in what you would normally think is aileron and collective. You put them in according to the picture. Again, it tells you here. Now on the left side, it's asking you if they're in the right position and if the servos are moving the swash in the right direction. So we're going to try that. Let's go up collective. And you can see that 2 of them are moving correctly, 1 of them is not. We do not want to go back to our radio and make any adjustments anymore. We now want to adjust on the computer. So I can look at it and see my left aileron is moving incorrectly. It's going down when it should go up. So I'll click on the left aileron. Do I want to switch it? Yes, I do. Now I have 3 of them moving in the right direction. I have collective up, collective down. I'll put it in the center, and I'll try right aileron. That's correct. Left aileron, forward, elevator, back elevator. So we're good. Everything's hooked up correctly and moving in the right direction. We can go on to the next page. And now what we're going to do is we're going to set our swash to be level and to be 0 degrees in the center. So we're going to put my stick in the center. We're going to make all the adjustments on the radio. We're going to make all the adjustments on the computer. So we'll put one blade over the nose. This is where your pitch gauge is going to come into play. Whichever one you have, you put this on your blade. You'll use that here in a second. The first thing we want to do is you want to level our swash. If you have a swash leveler that you use for your helicopter, this is where you would want to put that on there and use it at this time. I particularly take a look at it. I'm going to eyeball it and take a look. I'm going to look at it from the front. And I can see by the front that my left side is up higher than the right. And if I look at it from the side, it looks pretty level from the side. We won't be able to tell until I actually adjust that one. So we want to go ahead and adjust that in the computer. You'll see as I move this, make sure we're getting the right channel. That's channel 2. And I can just click on these arrows here, and you can see the servo moving the swash down and adjusting it. Now, what you really don't want to get too high in your trim here. What you can do, and what we can do with this one, but I won't do it, on this particular model until we can go through the setup. But you can see on this particular model right now, it's up at 75 to bring it level. Now there's 1 or 2 things you can do. You can adjust the other ones to bring it up. So I could actually bring this one back. I believe Mr. Mel says 40 is where he likes to see it, no more than 40 if you're making adjustments. Okay? So what we can actually do is we can move these other ones to bring them up to that so that we don't get out of control with one. Okay, and then we'll take a look at the swash. It looks very level to me there. And it looks very level to me there. Now, if you're one of those folks who does not like to have any trim put in here at the computer, at this point what you'd want to do is you'd want to remove your links and you want to adjust your links to level the swash. If you get a perfect setup here, your trims won't have anything on here. This is a fine tuner. Okay, but in the interest of time, we'll go ahead and leave those trims in there right now because that's what you can do if you don't have the same dimensions on your links. So now once we have that, we're going to go over here to the swash tab. Now what we want here is we want 0 degrees at mid-stick. So we make sure that our radio is at mid-stick. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to turn our pitch gauge on because we're going to make sure that we have 0 degrees at mid-stick. My radio is again in mid-stick. So pitch gauge is on. And tell you what, let's turn this upside down or right side up, however you want to look at it, so you can see it better with the camera. Brett's doing a great job with the camera, but he can only do so much. All right, so what we want to do is we want to go ahead and level our pitch gauge out. The best way to do this is somewhere on the helicopter that's level. Obviously the Extreme 700 has a nice big motor with a flat spot on it, so we can go and put it there. Set the pitch gauge on there. It's at 11 right now, so we want to make sure we hold her steady. All pitch gauges are going to work basically the same. Hit the 0. We're fluctuating 0 to 0.1. I'm good with that. So we'll go ahead and put our pitch gauge on here. At mid-stick, we're at 0.9, which is really good for starting out. This is another really good feature of the VBar, of the programming. If I go to the swash tab here, what you have is it's kind of like the old VCRs where you have 1 arrow and then 2 arrows, fast or slow, fine tuning. you want to adjust the collective up or down with those arrows. Obviously, if you hit the double arrow, it's going to move in a larger distance. The smaller arrow is fine tuning. So if we're looking at 0.9, we want to go down a little bit. So I'm going to fine tune with the 0, with the little small arrow. Actually, it's got 1, so we're going the wrong way. So let's go this way here. It's good that you see how that works. 1, 0.8. We'll go 2 clicks. We're fluctuating at 0.1 to 0. I'm good with that. That's where you want to be. So again, stick it mid. Okay? 0 on there. You can move that whole swash up or down. And you know, it's really, really good. Let me show you something really quick. You know, you can watch, if you zoom in on the swash there, Brett, you can see this is going to move the swash up or down. As you move that, it's moving all of them at the same. So that's the best way to, you know, you're going to get your 0 pitch that way. So let's go back and get where we had before. Hopefully you're not that far out on yours. And if you are, then you'd want to go ahead and adjust your linkages again before you did any of that. So bring it up. 0.3. 1. 0.5, almost there. This is so cool doing it this way. 0.1, 0.2, probably 1 or 2 more clicks. Make sure we get it right. There we are. 0 to 1. Perfect. Okay, so now we've got we leveled the swash with the first part on the servo tab, and then we did the swash up and down on the second tab. Again, if you highlight over these things, like we said earlier, you'll see a box come up and it'll tell you what that button actually does. And it also explains it on the left side. So we could continue. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to set our min and our max pitch. This is not going to affect your pitch curves that you're going to do later. This is setting up what the V-bar is going to get for its minimum and max pitch at full throw and full stop and full up. So I'm going to go all the way down. I'm going to go ahead and read what I have. 14.9. Might be a little bit much for some. So I'm going to go up at 13.6. And I'm going to show you here in a second how to even those out. So let's say we want to put 13 degrees pitch on this one. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'll leave it at the top. And I have 13.7. Over here, what you have is a slider. Let me get rid of that box. Let me go back. There we go. Get rid of that box. Okay? So we're at 100 on the slider. So what I want to do is come down. That's how much it's going to move. You want to stay between 80 and 100 on there, as it says on the left side. A really cool way to do that, you could do it several ways. You can either punch in a number down here and hit enter, but what I like to do is you just click on that tab right there, and then you can use the arrows on your keyboard. So we want to come down to 13, and you just click the arrows until it comes down. So we're 13.6, 13.5, 13.3, 12.9, 13. And we're at 94 on the screen. So now what I want to do is I want to come down. So you want the same on the top and the bottom in a perfect setup. So I have 13 at the top and I have 14 at the bottom. So now I want 13 at the bottom. So now what you want to do, once you set your max to even them out, you go back in your radio. It's the only time you're going to go back in your radio during the setup. You go back in your radio and you can go to your endpoints. And it actually tells you this on here as well. On the left side, it'll tell you that. Okay? And I'm going to go to my pitch on the bottom end, and I'm going to adjust my endpoint to 13. There's 13. So now, again, not to worry about the numbers in here, we'll worry about the numbers here. I'm going 13 at the top and 13 at the bottom. 12.7 to 13, 12.7 to 13. So we're good on both. So I'm going to go back to the center position, and we're done with the full collective. If you do not get between 80 and 100 on here, your geometry could be off. So you'd want to lengthen your rods, maybe move the balls in a little bit on the arms a little bit, depending on the helicopter that you have. Okay? All right, so we're done on this page. Another really, really cool page. This is going to set your cyclic throw. Okay? What you want is you want your stick in the mid position. Okay? And it's going to automatically, again, we should be right around 0, you know, below 1 to 0, okay, in mid stick. Again, depending on how you're going to do your stick, if you can get it particularly perfectly in the middle or not. Then you're going to come over here, and you'll hit this measure button, and it's going to automatically put what it wants 8 degrees in there. So I hit that, it automatically gives you a degree. I'm reading 10 degrees on there. So I need to come down on that slider because the V-bar says I want you at 8 degrees. So I'm going to click on this like we did earlier, and I'm going to go down on that arrow. And I'm going to stop right at 80. I'm at 83, 84, 85, which is fine for me. And I'm at 81. We can go down to 80. Again, you want to be between 80 and 100 on here. Oh, actually, it says 80 and 110. So at that point right now, at 80, I have 8 degrees cyclic, which is good for the V-bar. If you go back to the start position, it'll put you back to what you should have as 0 degrees. Okay? Okay, we're done with our pitch gauge. We can remove that because we all know that the batteries don't last that long. Okay, so we're done there. So now what we want to do is we want to hook up our tail. We go to the next tab, which goes to our tail. First thing you want to do before hooking up your tail is tell the V-bar what type of servo you have on your tail. We have the 251 on this one, BLS 251, but you can see on the drop-down menu there are several different selections. If your servo is not listed here, you just need to know the frequency of the servo and then pick one that has the same frequency as yours. If you pick the wrong one, you could have issues with your tail. Okay, so we've picked the right one. So now once we've done that, we want to go ahead and plug it in, plug our tail servo in. At this point, it has not been plugged in. Okay, now we have our tail servo hooked up into the V-bar in the correct port as it tells you here where to hook it up. And what we want to do now is we want to make sure that it's moving in the right direction. But so that you can see it, so that Brett can zoom in, let me go ahead and move this a little bit for you. Put that straight up. You'll be able to see the blades. So that should work for you there. And so if I want to move the tail, right now I'm moving the stick to the left. It's actually going to pull the tail to the left, making the nose go to the right, which is incorrect. So we want to reverse the servo. Not in the radio. We want to reverse it the same as we did with the cyclic servos earlier and reverse it in the V-bar. Just hit the reverse. Now, if I move to the left, it's going to pull the tail to the right, making the helicopter go to the left. So that's what we want. The next thing we're going to do with the tail is we're going to set the limit, or how much the tail can actually move. And this is done really simply, again, with the sliders. So if we go here, and I move this stick over to the left, you see it highlights the box saying that that's the one that I'm adjusting. What you want to do is you want to look back and see, you don't want any binding. You could do this one of two ways. You could sit and watch it until it reaches the end, or you can move this until you hear the servos binding a little bit. And then you back it off. And then you want to do the other side. Same way. Click on the arrow, and then adjust it accordingly. If you can look back there, you can see the servo moving and changing the limit of the servo in the back. Now you want these to be fairly close. They don't have to be exactly close. And it'll tell you in here if you can't reach what the requirements are between, if you're going over 120, you have too short of an arm, so you need to lengthen that arm a little bit. And again, left side will tell you what to do, the right side is where you do it. So we're done with the tail. Now this particular V-bar has Pro on it because it's the extreme version of the V-bar for the 700. So you will have Governor 1 and Governor 2 tabs on this particular one. If you don't have Pro on your V-bar, you will not have these tabs. So you will not see that. So we're going to click right through those. Mr. Mel has some great videos for the Governor if you need to have that and if you have Pro on there. So now the last thing we're going to cover on the front. Now if you remember way back in the beginning, when we initially had this on here, it had a Governor tab here because we had the Governor set on this V-bar. This is what you'll see with the Express version, where you'll see the main rotor, Although you won't have sliders, you'll have what you'll have is you'll have agility. You'll be able to click on 3 different modes of what you want over here. The Pro gives you the slider so you can fine tune it a little bit more, and you'd have a governor tab with the Pro. The one thing that I want to show you here, now you can see down here is all active. Like we said earlier, before we had it bound, all we saw was the voltage from the battery. Now you can see everything. If I move this, move the helicopter, you can see that the sensor is sensing movement. So it's an active running inventory, if you would, of what's going on with the helicopter at any particular time. Same thing if I move the controls. Not only are you moving the helicopter, but you're seeing all the sliders now move, telling you that what's happening on the VBar, while you're doing that. Okay, and last thing we want to do is we want to make sure that our gyro sensitivity is working. So what you need to do is go into your radio for the Futaba. You activate the gyro, set it in gyro mode. I tend to put it on my flight mode switch, which is switch E, which gives me three positions, so I can have different tail gain settings for different head speeds. So what you want to do is you set it all up that way and activate it. Now if I come in here to my up position, which is my normal mode, and I adjust the gyro gain on here, that bar should move. And it does. So I'm adjusting my gyro gain on the tail in the radio. One thing to be not to be concerned about is the numbers and the letters in your gyro gain on the radio. Okay, in the past when we had heading hold gyros and it wasn't a flybarless system, you would be around 50 to 60% in here. You could literally be down in the negatives on some of the radios, or 10% or 12% on the radio, but when you look at it on the VBar, it's like 80%. For instance, I'm at 33% in my radio, and the VBar is showing me at 89% for gyro gain. All relative numbers. What you're concerned about is what it shows on the screen. So once you're done with that and you have all that working, you're complete. You can close out. I highly, highly suggest that you go here and hit a save button, and then you can go into your documents. You can see I have several different VBar settings. You can name it whatever you want to. You can name it Rich's 700, ReadyHeli 700, my favorite helicopter, and just save all your settings. If you ever have a problem in the future with your VBar and we replace it for you, you can actually go to your computer and just download all the settings that you had made, and you don't have to go through this whole process again. Okay? I hope that clears up some things for the VBar. We are certainly here to help you out if you have issues with that. But from start to finish, if you have everything set up, it should take you anywhere from 15 minutes to, let's say, 45 minutes from setting up your VBar to getting it in the air. Be safe flying and have fun.